The 1920s was a new era of unprecedented changes, such as prohibition, and also changes in politics, economics, and morality.
So, now we go on to social problems and issues and events in the 1920s. Some important people that were big icons in the 1920s for society were flappers, or young girls who used to hang out in speakeasies and had makeup and were sexually out there, kind of, promiscuous, and wore short skirts, and they always danced to jazz. And there's also Al Capone. He was a famous organized crimester, like mobster. He was also into the whole speakeasy prohibition thing. In the 1920s, there was a revival in the fundamentalist religion, which took about the literal reading of the Bible and negated all modern science, especially revolution, which is where the Scopes monkey trial comes from. There's a big debate over teaching evolution in schools, and there were laws against it. With the 1920s came kind of what was mass media. Radios became really popular. Came out with KDKA, which was the first broadcasting station. Almost everyone had radios in their houses. There was also movies. Hollywood became really popular. New journalism called gossip gained a lot of attention. Advertising started paying for almost everything to get their products out there and to endorse other movies and radios and things of that sort. And automobiles became really, really popular. It became the new auto age with the Model T and Ford and things of that sort. There was a new invention called the phonograph that became really popular. It played records and made it so everyone could have music in their homes. Also, what became really popular was jazz. Everyone started listening to it, and it was played all over the place on radios and bars. Everyone was dancing to it. It became just a super craze. And finally, a really big thing that happened in 1920 was the 19th Amendment, which was women's suffrage, which women have been fighting for voting for a long time. And that basically wraps up the new society of the 1920s.
After World War I, there was a huge economic boom in America. This was a time of the Second Industrial Revolution, in which the production in the United States practically doubled, and there were millions of workers, millions of new. It was a time for innovation, and one of the biggest innovations of the 1920s was the automobile. Although it came out earlier, the automobile did become real big in the 1920s. At one point, there were over 26 million cars by 1929. That's one car for every 5 people in America, which shaped their lives. And it was all thanks to Henry Ford and his assembly line, which made producing cars much faster and ended up being used on other products. And by 1925, you could create one car for every 10 seconds as factory, as opposed to what would normally take 11 hours before Henry Ford started his factory. Production also led to another important innovation or new thing coming out of the 20s was something called welfare capitalism, where basically a company would add new programs and improve worker conditions in order so they don't become unhappy, and also it was meant to prevent unions. So there were things like insurance companies started becoming big at this time, and many companies allowed their workers to actually buy stock in the stock market. And also there are many figures like Herbert Hoover, who started his Associated Estates, which was believed that the government should cooperate with businesses to make the market better and basically improve the economy in the interests of both corporation and government. The 20s also saw the addition of advertisement, and research on advertising techniques in order to attract people, which became very popular with the advent of the radio and Hollywood.
In the 1920s, the Republican Party was a ruling power for politics. Warren Harding, president in 1921 through 23, was known for his shallowness and intellectual weakness. Usually his meetings were not serious to him, where he'd act relaxed and didn't seem as there was much seriousness in people's problems. He died from a heart attack in 1923, and after his death, the government soon found out, as well as the public, of all the scandals behind the government. Calvin Coolidge took control after Harding in 1923 to 29. He was the opposite of Harding, believed in the least amount of government. He at least worked 4 hours a day at office. The business of government is business became the perfect philosophy for the Republican New Era. Showed most interest in lowering federal spending, lowering taxes, and blocking congressional initiatives. Herbert Hoover, in 1929 through 33, was the most influential figure as president. He was a Secretary of Commerce, believed that in-line business, encouraged and informed by the government, would act in the public interest, believed that government needed to only advise private citizens on the most important issues, encouraged the creation and expansion of National Trade Association. Along with these three presidents, Andrew Milon served as all three presidents' Secretary of Treasury. He was the leader for the trimming of federal budget, cutting taxes on incomes, corporate profits, and inheritances. It was close to the Progressive Taxation Association with Woodrow Wilson.
As you can see, this time, the 1920s, was a time of change and exposure in many aspects and great gain. This time was vital in our history to lead America to be the great nation that it is today.